Coming up to about 18 months ago now, I made the decision to transition from female to male. I reached a point in my own life where I was absolutely ready to die. If I didn't do that, I was ex-military. If you could put me on a plane flying into Iraq and going back and working in a prison, transition from female to male, that is the most terrifying thing that I could ever tell you. My message to anybody is, when it feels scary to jump, you jump.
To mark the 200th episode of the Stephen Sully study, I'm about to have a very different conversation. Today's conversation is about transgender. I've invited a guy called Jaxon Feeley onto my podcast to talk to me about the transition where he went from Jess, a former female, now a male. This is a conversation I've not really had in my life, nor do I know much about. But when Jaxon Feeley reached out to me on social media, I thought it was only right to give him an opportunity, to give him a platform to talk to me about his journey and his mental health struggles being a female and feeling like he was trapped in a different body. I think you're going to find this quite a compelling, quite a moving story and something that's going to shape your education. Be happy and never content. Okay, welcome back to my podcast, Stephen Sully Study. Jaxon,
Yes.
Thank you very much for your time. Thank you for jumping on the train from Wigan, coming down to London. And it's going to be a very, very interesting interview. So, Jaxon Feeley, 28 years of age.
Yes.
This is quite different to any of the podcasts I've done before. I've got, by the time this comes out, this will be over 200. It might even be the 200th episode. I've interviewed boxers, I've interviewed athletes, I've interviewed entrepreneurs, I've interviewed a lot of people who people would deem as like either successful, go-getters, strivers, people that are in the public domain. But I never interviewed anyone that has transitioned from one gender to another.
Yeah.
And I love learning. I love talking to human beings, and I love finding out why they do certain things, why they think certain things, and why they're on their own mission. So I know you reached out, and at the moment I started reading your message and listening to your voice notes, I thought, it's a very compelling story, and I think this should have a platform where people can listen to it and then kind of talk about it and even debate, and also, raise questions and just figure out their own life as well.
Yeah, 100%.
There's going to be people out there. So, in your own words, then, okay, why don't you introduce yourself and explain kind of why you want to share this story?
Well, like you said, my name's Jax. Coming up to about 18 months ago now, I made the decision to transition from female to male. And that is because I reached a point in my own life where I was absolutely ready to die. If I didn't do that, I suppressed it for a long, long time. I didn't really know what it was. I just knew that there was something not quite right. And it took me to get to the age of around 26 to start really figuring out what that was. So I went down many different avenues before getting to that point, and once I got to that point, it wasn't going away. So as terrified as I was, it was, I do this or I give up completely. And I reached a point where I thought, well, I've got this amazing family, I've got amazing friends, I'm a prison officer, I love my job. I was looking at myself and I was thinking, I don't want to die, but I don't want to live anymore. And it's, what do you do with that? What do you do with that? I don't want to die, but I don't want to live anymore. So that was the conflict, and I made the decision, right, well, I'm going to do this, I'm going to transition, and if it fails, I'm ready to go. But luckily, it's been the best, most terrifying, but the best 18 months of my life. So that is why I'm now trying to be visible for, whether that's children who need to see someone who represents them or how they're feeling, or parents to reassure them that their child, isn't a freak or isn't going to lose everything in life, or just to show people that you can still have a life, you can still have a career, you can still have a relationship, you can still have friends, you can still have everything, and your life doesn't have to be over. Because when you're looking at that potentially being your life of transitioning, it really is the most terrifying thing that you could go through. Like, if I told you I was ex-military, if you could put me on a plane flying into Iraq and going back and working in a prison, transition from female to male, that is the most terrifying thing that I could ever tell you could go through. But for me, my message to anybody is, when it feels scary to jump, you jump. Otherwise, you stay in the same place your entire life, and that's what I'm trying to do. So I massively appreciate the opportunity to talk and get the message out, and I'm sure there'll be plenty negative as well as plenty positive, but we've got to have these conversations.
Definitely. Well, it's an absolute pleasure, Jaxon. So the first question that comes to mind is, like, when I've seen pictures and obviously doing a bit of research, you looked like before previously as Jess, am I right?
Yeah.
Like just a happy, female, and you look like just like a textbook kind of female.
Yeah.
And it's almost like, from an outsider, bar if you were to look at your TikTok and explain, how you explain in your videos, like the way you've done what you've done, etc. But to most people, it's like, but you're happy. You look happy.
Yeah.
So what's the big difference between looking happy and actually being happy, in your opinion?
Obviously, for someone transitioning, you want the outside to match the inside. But in terms of being happy, for me, I was always that smiley, people. I was known for my smile. I think Jess was desperate to be happy. Jess really wanted to be happy, but I realised, obviously, that Jess was never going to be happy. And I think I always put a massive front on, I put a big mask on, and I think that's because I didn't want anybody else to ever feel like I was feeling. Like, I always wanted to make sure that everyone around me felt good, and I wouldn't like it if I felt like someone didn't have a good time when they were with me. And I was always very, like, out there and sort of a bit daft, and taking the mick or trying to make people laugh, or I've always been very open with, I love my friends, and I'm tactile, and I'm just like a people person, but that would only last for so long. So I could keep it up for a shift at work, and then I'd go home and be a miserable sod, or I'd change like that. So I could keep it up for a certain amount of time when I was around people, or when I was in work and I was in uniform, and I was hiding behind, or we was out and I was drunk, and I could hide behind things, but I could never keep that up for a sustained period of time. So the times when people did see me, whether that was, at work or on a night out or on a picture or whatever, you'd see this really happy person who, you would think was full of life and really happy with themselves and motivated and all these things. But, deep down, there was a massive level of anxiety and depression. And for a long time, I didn't know what that was. So obviously, sorry, in answer to your question, you can look like the happiest person in the world. And usually it's the people who are the most upset and sad who generally look like the happiest people in the world, because I think they mask it so well. But so
you was in the military,
as
Jess, for 4 years.
You
served in Iraq.
So I did a tour. I was part of a tactical police squadron. So what we did was, we was based in Cyprus, and every day and night we would fly in and out and do several different things. So back and forth. Like, obviously I can't say loads, but back and forth and in and out. And I loved the military. I loved it. But
good time over the 4 years.
Oh God, yeah. Like, I would advise anyone, anyone, especially, as a teenager, late teens, thinking about, a career. The military is amazing in bringing you out of that box of, the small town living and people not really thinking there's anything else in the world. And it makes you grow up, as you can imagine. It makes you grow up quick, and it teaches you discipline and structure. And for me, it gave me a massive sense of belonging. And I joined when I was 19. And I absolutely loved it. It was one of the best decisions I made, because it does show you the rest of the world. And I think a lot of people, they get very stuck in the box, don't they? And they think, well, I've just got to stay in this town where I was born and do what everybody else is doing and do what society says I should do. And I think the military is great in bringing people out of that and showing you that, for me at the time, it showed me that I could be a gay woman, and I could be a rugby player at the time, and I could go and do all these things in the military and travel the world and belong to something incredible. So it gave me a massive sense of pride when I was in, and I'm very proud to have been a part of it.
So, like, because I was going to say this, like the army, I was going to join the Marines when I was younger. I actually applied, and then I spoke out of it, and I've spoke about this a few times on my podcast, and I got talked out of it by my mum and dad.
Yeah,
that's obviously a separate conversation. But one thing was drawing me to it is the lifestyle, like traveling the world. Yeah. I love keeping fit. I box. I've always been into the gym or playing different sort of sports, and I thought that would bring the best out in me. And I've heard it so many times that, people go to the military and it does bring the best out in them. And I'm a big believer that if you change your surroundings and your environment, that can actually lead on to a much more fulfilled life. Yeah. And even the way you were talking there about the military, I could even tell by the tonality and the way your posture was, it kind of like you seemed really upbeat about it.
Oh, yeah.
And it was a little bit difficult for me to, don't know whether it's empathise or sympathise, I don't know what the right word is, but I've never really suffered so much from like depression or thinking I needed to kind of change who I was.
Yeah.
Obviously there are moments where I feel fearful, I feel anxiety, I feel slight depression, but I think the blessing I've always had is I know it's short-lived, and then it goes into something else. And usually when I get into the gym or into a boxing ring, or I make a sale, or I do a really good podcast with a cool guest, I feel upbeat again, and you go through those cycles. And what I'm trying to get to in a roundabout way is, as Jess, and you were kind of being fulfilled with the military and traveling and stuff, and you're playing rugby, everything else, didn't you just feel at that point maybe like, look, I'm a female feeling great, and maybe what I was thinking was, I don't know what the right word is. Maybe it was like I'm thinking too much into it, but clearly not, because it must have lingered around for so long that you thought, you know what, no matter what I'm doing, I'm just feeling down.
Yeah, basically. So the aspect of the gender transition didn't really come into play until about 2 years ago now. So my whole time in the military, that was not something that was in my mind. But yeah, when you've been part of something like that, it makes your shoulders go back. For me, I was proud of that, and I'm very proud of that now, and I'm the same with the prison service. I think I've always been like that when it comes to a uniform and a service. Because it does give you that sense of pride, and I think that's right. You're doing something for your country, and it's amazing. And it made me very happy for a long time. And when I joined, I was struggling at that time before I did, like 18, 19 years old at home, because I was trying my best to be that 18-year-old girl, from Wigan, and what everyone else was doing. You go out every weekend and, jeans and a nice top and, 6-inch heels, and, my hair was down my back, and I was trying so hard to be that person.
Yeah.
But I didn't know I was doing that. So I can look back now and think, oh my God, like, you was trying so hard to be that person.
So like overcompensating. Almost.
Yeah, just
like forcing it a bit.
Yeah, like when I look now and I see pictures, I think you are so uncomfortable. And I can see it now looking back, but back then I just thought that I was struggling with my mental health, and I had this element of anxiety, and at that time as well, I hadn't come out as gay either, so I was trying to figure that out. So I was just in this world of trying to be this 18-year-old girl who was, trying to date men and trying to be this girl from Wigan, and it was just a complete polar opposite to who I am. But at that age and at that time, I didn't know what it was. It was just this feeling, like from being a baby. I think I've just had this feeling of anxiety, like my mum says. There's just always been an element of anxiety there, even from being a baby and being given a bottle and the label Avent, and I would like spin it round and have to put my thumb on the A, like weird little things like that. That there was just an element of anxiety and over something, and so I've lost my train of thought. What was I talking about then?
No, yeah, so like, trying to figure out, because like going back to like the simple version, not of your story, but let's just say someone who is trying to figure out who they are in life, and let's say they're female or male, doesn't matter, and they feel that they're in a pattern of depression. Yeah, there's a lot of people like that, especially now with the age of social media. They're just trying to figure out where they fit into the world, and I totally get that. Like going back to when I was younger, the blessing and the curse is there was no such thing as social media. Therefore, I could look at someone and go, oh, that sounds like a good conversation. They sound like they're doing something really good. I want to follow that path. The downside to not having that is I wasn't exposed to it. But then the upside to it, because I wasn't exposed to it, you kind of weren't feeling like, oh, that person's doing really well, and I'm not. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%.
So you got that aspect of it. But in my experience, I do a lot with a community in Bromley and Downham for Bromley and Downham ABC, which is Amateur Boxing Club, which helps the young kids develop their skills. Because personally, what I found from boxing is boxing brings the best out in people if you choose to dedicate yourself to it, hard work, self-belief, confidence, etc. And I've seen a lot of timid, maybe depressed or uncertain children that find the boxing club, and then they suddenly fall in love with it, and they find this new lease of life. And that sometimes can solve that one aspect of mental health and also depression. But how the hell would you know that, well, look, I've put this kid through boxing, I've taken him to a new country, they've done this, they've done that. You know what the answer is? They need to change their gender. Where the hell does that come from? Because typically it would be, get them into sport or something like that. Where's that last box?
Mate, honestly, it's been a world of chaos, absolute world of chaos. And I know what you're saying. A lot of people, they're are struggling with depression and anxiety, especially the younger population now, where they see social media and they think, well, you've got that and you've got that and you're doing that, so I must be doing shit. And it depresses you, doesn't it? Because people obviously only post the positive, and that's why I'm trying to do what I'm doing. But there is if someone is struggling, I think a lot of reasoning behind depression and anxiety, in my opinion, is lack of mental stimulation. Because physical as well, because if you put someone into a situation where they're dedicating themselves to something like boxing or a sport or something that they're passionate about, it gives people a purpose. And I think that's the big thing that drives people into feeling so down. They feel like they've got no purpose, they feel like they've got no worth. Why, what do I need to get up in the morning for? And I've recently just had surgery, and I was off work for 2 months, and I was in that slippery slope again, because I'm not, just because I'm so used to working or using my brain or getting up and doing something. So as soon as you feel like there's nothing for you to get up for, I think you massively start slipping down that slide. But lack of mental and physical stimulation is massive, and people just sit there scrolling through TikTok or Instagram, whatever, and they might get a little bit motivated, but then don't do anything about it, and they'll just sit and feel like shit. Yeah. But if you put yourself into something and find your passion and work to find that passion and think, well, it's okay if I try a million different things and fail, but one thing I'll try and I'll fall in love with it, and I can make something of that. Yeah. And that'll give me some sort of pride and worth. And
because I know it's such a recent thing. It's like, if I was speaking to you like 10 years from now, and you've got that whole kind of case study and that experience of being Jaxon and fulfilling your life in loads of different areas. I'm not saying the conversation is going to be totally different, but because it's so fresh, it's like only a couple of years ago you decided to do it. My devil's advocate kind of thing here is, how do we not know that there could have been something else, not boxing, but something else out there that could have brought the best out in Jess, that would have made her feel fulfilled, therefore not taking the decision to change your gender? Or do you believe that other thing doesn't exist? You had to be Jaxon.
Yeah, no, I had to be Jaxon. And I only figured that out because I tried everything everything to fill Jess's void. And that is the answer to your question. I think, if someone's feeling low and depressed and anxious and whatever, and you can find them a passion and it helps them, sorts them out, then it wasn't depression, it was lack of passion and stimulation, something that you love, wanting to have a purpose. But if you go and do things that you love and you're slowly losing the love and losing the attention and becoming really down like constantly and not being able to fill that void, then that's when there's something more, and then you have to figure that out. And that's kind of what I did, which is why my mum and dad must have been driven crazy by me, because they thought that I was so impulsive and just causing chaos all the time. Like when I was 14, I decided I need to move school. Because I had it in my head that I needed to move school, I needed to start again, I needed to be the real me. Yeah. Whatever that means. So I convinced my mum at 14 that I needed to move school. There was no problem with my school whatsoever. I was doing fine, I had loads of mates, I was playing sport, I was absolutely nothing wrong at all. But in Jess's head, I need to move school. I'm not happy, I need a fresh start. So I moved school, put my mum and dad through all of that, and I was there for 2 months. I want to go back. Yeah. And then luckily they let me, and I moved back. And what is that? That's just ridiculous. And it was things like that. I finished school, I went to college, and then I decided I was going to university. 2 months, quit, more money down the drain, and then what else? Well, I was working Total Fitness at the time. I'll just work in Total Fitness because, going to the gym makes me feel good. And I just get addicted to little things that, any little thing that would make me feel good, I would detach myself to and go, no, I need to do this all the time. I need to do that and be around that person because that makes me feel good. And it was like I was just desperate to feel okay. And obviously I made the decision to join the RAF. And when I did, that felt like I've done it. I found it. I'm all right. I'm 19. I found this job that is, military. It's a masculine role. It's because I was always a tomboy. Loved my sport and whatever else. I can play sport. I can be in uniform. I can feel tough. I can do. It challenges me mentally. I can do all these things. I can travel the world. It gives me everything. And then especially when I joined and I realised I was gay, and I joined, at the time, a gay woman, and I joined the rugby team, and I was surrounded by women who were like me, quite like tomboy women, who play rugby, and a lot of them were gay women, and they're all very similar. So to me then, I was like, no, I've sorted it. I'm done. I'm in the military forever. And I was so happy. But again, it was like anything, it was just filling a void. And as soon as I got bored, I would just dip again. And it was because it was such a suppressed emotion that I didn't even know was happening. So the military, because it was a massive life change, and amazingly, I loved it. It kept me going for 2-3 years. And then, boom, just something switched, and that void had run its course, and I wasn't okay again. And then I just made the impulsive decision. No, I'm done. I need to go home. I'm leaving. I need to go and be at home. I need to go and be with my mum. And my mental health just took a nosedive over a period of 12 months, like it had before. And it just depends on what you do to try and fill that void. So going to uni only lasted 2 months. Joining the military lasted 4 years. And then it would just come back, and if you're not authentic and honest with yourself, it'll just creep up on you, even if you don't know what it is. So obviously at the time I didn't know what it was, and when I did decide to leave, I came back off tour, and I was at home for a couple of months, and I literally just did not leave my mum's side for a couple of months, and I went shopping with her, I went hairdressing with her, I was like crying all day, every day. Couldn't look anyone in the eye. I didn't know what to wear. I stopped looking after myself. And then at that point, you just think you're just depressed. You've just been on tour. You live in a different. You struggle anyway because it's a completely different day-to-day life. And I just thought that's what it was. I just thought I've just got bad mental health, and that was the point where I ended up seeing a doctor then and talking about how I was feeling, and ending up on, antidepressant and anxiety medication and whatever, which I still take now. Whether I need them or not, I don't know. But that was the road I went down. That's what I thought it was. And I went straight into the prison service after that. After I joined them, after I left the military, and that then gave me another, challenge, new uniform, new people, new whatever, and then it was just like a cycle like that. So it's just filling a void. If there's something really wrong, you will just fill a void for however many years you're willing to, and then you'll just reach a point where people will either stay depressed forever and just go down that hole, give up on life, or make a decision to change. And luckily I got to that point.
Yeah. Like you said,
tell me to shut up, by the way, if I'm
it's all good stuff. Like you were just saying, like it's filling a void. There's a lot of people that I know who have without realizing it, so they got addicted to drinking way too much, and it's actually sent them over the edge. There's also people who've been addicted to drugs or both.
Yeah. And
then there's self-harm, and then sometimes people go beyond that and they actually do commit suicide and kill themselves, take their own life.
Yeah.
You mentioned about drinking and stuff and putting on a bit of a front when you used to be Jess and trying to be happy, but really you were down. Drinking, drugs, was there ever a point where you felt you wanted to actually take your own life and kill yourself?
Yeah, I've definitely reached those points before. In terms of drink and drugs, I've never touched drugs because I've always had a massive fear of my own mind. So for me, drugs was always something that I can't, because I'm already scared of this. I can't not be in control of it. So that has always been something I've kind of steered away from. But drinking, the military, and then it's a drinking culture, and that kind of makes you feel happy and makes you feel confident, and it just helped with my mask. But it never really became something that I was doing all the time. I definitely reached a point where I couldn't drink without having some sort of emotional breakdown, or battering the wall, or having some sort of just crying my eyes out because there was something going on, or I weren't feeling okay. But in terms of suicidal thoughts, I definitely reached periods throughout my life of feeling that low, but more so when probably the last 6 months of 2020, when I sort of really started to think, you know what, I'm gonna have to either transition or something, because I can't carry on with this. I was still being a prison officer, and when you're feeling like that and you're feeling so unhappy and angry at the world, it is the easiest place in a prison to cause an argument or have a fight, or just turn into a dickhead officer. And I was always a really good prison officer, and I build a good rapport with the lads, and want to help people change their life. And that environment just is not great when you're in a bad place yourself. So I kind of started deteriorating over those 6 months, and management and whatnot started to realise that I was changing, and I was becoming someone who you didn't really want to be around. I was argumentative, and I was just ready to, when you're just ready to go all the time because something not right. And so obviously when I made that decision to come out to my family and whatnot, I had to reach a point where I do this or I die. And like I said to you before, I don't want to die, but I don't want to live anymore. So there needs to be a decision somewhere. There needs to be something has to change, because something isn't right. This isn't fitting, and I'd spent the 12 months previous watching YouTube videos about transitioning and just being completely hooked on this and thinking this is who I am, but having an unbelievable amount of embarrassment and shame about it. And no one should ever be embarrassed or ashamed about who they are. And obviously now I'm obviously not that, but at the time I was just embarrassed and ashamed, and I thought, I can't do that. I can't go and look my dad in the eyes and say I'm gonna have a sex change. I can't do that. And it was just terrifying, and it was just, I felt like I'm going to ruin everyone else's life, and I'm going to put my family through that, and I've done nothing but cause chaos anyway for the last 27 years with everything else I've been trying to do. I can't do that now. But then on the other hand, you know, we've always been such a close family. You know, my mum, my dad, and I have a sister and a brother, and we've always been so close as a unit, and I didn't want to leave them, and I didn't want to do that to them either. And, you know, I had everything. Jess had everything. And I put a lot of guilt on myself for feeling so low, because when you feel like that, you wonder why. And especially when you look at your life and people say the standard things, you know, look, think about what you've got, think about everything you've got, think about everything you've got going for you and whatever else. And it's probably the worst thing to say to someone feeling like that. But when you do look at it, Jess had everything. There was no reason for Jess to be sad. But yeah, so there just had to be a decision. So I obviously made that decision and thought, right, I'm not okay, so I'm going to do this. And when I did finally come out, and I made a YouTube video to tell everybody, and I was off sick from work at the time. I wanted to just run away. And when I did make that video and tell everyone, I had an overwhelming amount of support and love, and it was absolutely incredible. You know, at the time I'd gone off sick from work and ran away to Brighton and just fucked off, and just thought I need to go and hide. You know, I can't do this in Wigan. I can't let people watch me do this. I can't. So when people saw that video, and my friends and everyone will say it to me now and admit that, they looked at me then and thought, well, you've got what you want now. You know, you're doing this, you're doing it. Like, you should be happy now. And little did I realise that after coming out, it had to get a hell of a lot worse before it then got better. And that was when I'd started to have serious suicidal thoughts and horrendous dreams. And you know, I'm sat and I'm in Brighton on my own with my two dogs, and I'm cutting their tea, and I'm panicking because I've got a knife in my hand. I'm putting it down, thinking, why am I panicking? Because I've got a knife in my hand. You know, I don't want to die. So why am I having intrusive thoughts? Why am I having dreams that are terrifying the life out of me? Why am I thinking like that? And it was because when I'd come out, and you know, like anybody who goes through something like this, and I'd built such an identity of Jess, I'd lost everything. I felt like I'd lost everything. I felt like I'd lost Jess's identity, but I hadn't figured out who Jax was yet. And that in between stage of beginning to transition and trying to figure out who you are, but then feeling like, well, I've lost everything that Jess was. You know, I'm not. I was this strong, athletic, ex-military gay woman. You know, and who was dead happy around everyone else and daft and whatever else. And I just felt like I'd lost all that. And then I had no idea who Jax was. You know, no one was calling me Jax then. I was still she. I was, if anything, I'd been called a man my entire life. And as soon as I came out transitioning, I'd started being called a woman everywhere I went, because I must have just looked like a female with a shaved head. And for 20 odd years prior, I'd gone out in a dress and heels and hair down my back, and had people coming up to me in pubs saying like, are you a bloke? And I'm just like, I can't win here. But that in between stage, that awkward, you know, who am I? What am I doing? How do I look? What do I wear? I'm strapping my boobs down with tape. I'm feeling like the most uncomfortable I've ever felt, but I'm meant to be happy because I've told everyone now. So I can't exactly pretend to hide. I can't hide behind Jess anymore because I've told everyone. But then I still look very much like Jess. I've just cut my hair. You know, everyone knows I've still got boobs and I've got a different voice, and I've not even started hormones then. And that in between stage of trying to figure that out was the worst time of my life. And at that point, that is when I got to a point where I was like, I was scared.
Do you know the dreams that you said
Yeah.
Could you elaborate on it? Like what was going on? Like you were literally killing yourself
Yeah.
in your dreams?
Yeah. Just that I can't remember detail, but I just remember waking up wet through and thinking, I've just killed myself in that dream. And it just kept happening. And I was thinking, I'm 4 hours away from home. I've moved to this place because I thought, you know, Brighton, everyone accepts everyone in Brighton. It's, you know, a bit land of the odd, and I love it there, and it's everything. But because of COVID, it was kind of like shut, and it just sort of became quite lonely. And I just realised that I needed my support system. You know, I haven't done this on my own, and you can't do this on your own. You really can't. But initially I just thought, I need to just run away. I just need to go and hide. I don't want people to watch me in this vulnerable state of this in-between pile of shit that I think I'm in, because I just felt like a freak. I just felt like no one's ever going to love me again. No one's ever going to want to be in a relationship with me. You know, no, I'm not going to be able to have a career. I felt like I couldn't go back to the prison service. I couldn't be a prison officer and go back after and be a man now after they've known me as Miss Feeley for 4 years. I can't go back into the worst place in the world in that aspect. And I was just a complete mess, and I just thought, I just don't know what I'm going to do. And I realised that my friends and my family wanted to be there for me, and it was me not letting them be there, because I was so ashamed and I was so embarrassed. And I think it was a constant conflict of, you need to do what you want to do, but you actually have so much shame in it that you kind of still contemplate not living.
You know, like I said earlier, like my simple mind, and it's not a simple thing that you've gone through, but my simplistic way of kind of analysing it, if I'm not talking to you right now, but just thinking about a very similar scenario, let's just say a kid, I always go back to like the children, because maybe they're trying to find their way in life, and just like myself, I didn't know what I was going to do later on. Fortunately, from podcasting 4 years ago, that stimulates me, this great business, this great artist. I do boxing. I feel like I get a lot of fulfillment. Don't get me wrong, there's still days where I get low periods, but there's also moments in the low period days where I get massive highs, and it's just a constant roller coaster. Yeah. And every time I speak to whoever it may be, whether someone's an athlete or an entrepreneur or a public figure, they all go through very, very similar sort of cycles and emotions. But sometimes someone gets it so extreme that they feel like they have to do something quite radical. So anyway, like, you know, so if my own son came to me, he's only 3 years of age, but you know, later on in life he felt a little bit down, I would try and find something like the boxing to stimulate him. But then the next answer, which you just touched on earlier, is when you were a female but you didn't realise you were gay, you were trying to date men, and then you suddenly started dating women, and then that sometimes usually is the answer, because I've known guys, right, who have been gay all their life, or in their mind, but they've never gone out with a fella, another guy, because their family forbids it. So I know a guy who is Turkish and he's never come out, but it's clear as day that he is. He's never had a girlfriend. He comes across as gay, but he can't admit, and he's in this bit of a trap, because he feels like his environment, his family would put a lot of pressure on him. Now, I'm pretty sure if they accepted it and said, yeah, that's fine, that's totally fine, which it is, then I think his life would be a lot more fulfilled, and he would step out of that feeling like he was worthless and depressed, etc. But then again, like, to have that third box where, no, actually, that didn't do it. You need to transition.
I feel sorry for my mum and dad.
And like, again, I want to choose my wording carefully here, because like, I've never had a conversation like this, Jaxon,
it's okay.
on the podcast or with someone. I'm just trying to, again, always try and play devil's advocate. I think what you've done is heroic, and I feel like what you've done is amazing for yourself. But could I turn around to, like, maybe going back to my son, right? 10 years time, and he says, right, I've done all this, hasn't worked. I've felt like I might be gay, that hasn't worked. I now want to transition to a female. I'm like, No, Mason. Like what? No. And I'll be like, no, that's just not possible, mate. Like I would be like that, just as a dad. And I know it's quite comical, but there could be real conversations like that being had with the mums, the dads, the daughters, the sons, and it's such a difficult thing to say. You know what? Yeah, crack on with that.
Yeah.
Because there might be scenarios which I have read as well. When I was doing research into yourself, I didn't write down all the names, but there are people that have transitioned, and after 5 or 10 years, they're like, "Oh my fucking god, I shouldn't have done this."
Yeah.
And now they feel trapped, and some of them transition back.
Yeah, I know.
And that's a whole new podcast that we could talk about at some other point. So what I'm trying to get at is, I feel, and this is why I've agreed to do the podcast with you, this is so important. Like, people like you need to be listened to, because you're going to help a lot of people make that transition and make that jump, which I think is great. But there is a danger, which is if you pull that trigger too early, where there could have been other solutions, that might encourage someone to do something they shouldn't have, shouldn't be doing, maybe.
No, I 100% know what you're saying.
Do you know where I'm coming from?
100%. And I think it's so important to especially when it comes to kids, to try and not genderify things. And it is sort of a lot better than it used to be. And, you know, the majority of boys are going to like certain things, the majority of girls are going to like certain things. But I just think children or anyone should just have the freedom to do what they want. You know, if it's like you know, in clothes shops, and there's, you know, a boys section and a girls section,
blue and pink typically.
And I always felt so uncomfortable shopping. I used to hate shopping ever since being a kid, because I never felt comfortable in the girls bit, but I couldn't go in the boys bit because I was a girl, and so I felt uncomfortable in both. And it puts you in such a situation where the amount of times I'd just storm out of shops and end up crying and just feel so uncomfortable. And for me, that's why I know this is right, because I look back now and I see all these things and I think,
this is where I belong.
This is where I belong, you know, and that's been happening. It's like when people come out as gay and you look back and you think, well, yeah, you've always been gay. You can see the little thing. There's little aspects of people's personality and identity that you see before someone, you know, comes out as gay or whatever. But especially with gender and with me, even my mum now will look back and think, absolutely, you know, from the beginning. But yeah, I mean, I can understand, especially with parents as well, it's fear. You know, I was 27 when I told my mum and dad, and they were still completely blown out of the water, you know, so shocked and afraid and scared and probably a bit angry, you know, because as much as someone doesn't die, you have to grieve a person. And I've tried to go into this with the most understanding, open mind as possible, because it doesn't just affect me. Like, my transition affects my whole environment. It affects my family. It affects my friends. It affects my colleagues. It affects everybody. And I've always tried to be so understanding, especially to my family and, you know, my mum, my dad and my siblings, because they've had a daughter and a sister for 27 years. You know, my mum and my dad chose that name. They chose Jessica. They chose that, you know, that's who the little girl was. And, you know, they've had this vision for however long I've been alive, that this is their daughter, and they've been calling me she, and they've been calling me Jess, and they brought me into the world, and that's who I was. And, you know, I don't know whether my dad's thought about walking me down the aisle, or, you know, things like that you think about as a dad, if you have a daughter, or things like that. So I've always tried to be understanding towards them, because you have to grieve a person. You have to grieve Jess, even though Jess isn't gone. And I mean, even I've had to grieve Jess in a sense, because part of that, you know, that identity is gone. But the way I tried to explain it to my mum and dad, because they struggled at first, you know, they massively struggled, because it's hard to get your head around, and they panicked that it would be the wrong decision. But I couldn't say anything other than, I need you to be on board with this, because it's either a dead daughter or a living son. What do you want? It's your child, and I'm still the same person. Jess is still here. Jess can come on this journey with me. I'm probably more feminine now as Jax than I was as Jess, because I'm okay and I can embrace it and I can be who I am. But I just couldn't have Jess be the image anymore. I couldn't have Jess be at the forefront, because something isn't clicking. It's not right, and it's time to be happy, and it's time to. I feel like I've always had Jess and Jax like this, and I've just gone like that, and just put Jax at the front, and just made it that image. And ever since I have started to sort of come into my own again, even my mum says to me now, she's like, I can see the light back in your eyes. I can see the sparkle back in your eyes. You always used to light up a room, and you do again, and you're getting that back, and you're getting that little spark, and that little, that bit of life about you back. And so you can see, I always say, you can't see the weight on someone's shoulders until it's gone. And that's massive. Like I always say it at work, and I talk a lot to the prisoners who I work with about changing their lives in that way. And if you don't deal with it, it's just going to get heavier and heavier.
Yeah. So, it's an interesting story speaking to someone in the military. It's an interesting story talking to someone who's working in the prison service. It's an interesting story to figure out someone's come out of, mental health challenges. It's interesting story to talk about someone who said, like, now I'm gay, and now it's an even more interesting story to talk about someone who's changed gender, and you put all that into one podcast, and we've got something which is mind blowing, to be honest. And it's a very.
I'm glad I'm not boring you.
Yeah, it's my natural reaction is say it's a crazy journey, but life is meant to be a bit like that.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be just textbook, because if it is, it is a bit.
It shouldn't be easy, should it? A bit boring.
It is boring. But this, I got to say, it's like a different level of trying to find your meaning and your purpose in life. So talk to me about the prison service then, okay? So the inmates, your peers, your colleagues, friends there, they knew you as Jess. Yeah. And it's quite, look, I've never been into a prison, right? Thankfully, and I plan not to. But I imagine, by looking at programs, documentaries, films, etc., and what people have told me, it's quite a tough environment, And if there's any kind of weakness, physically, emotionally, your mindset, they might pick up on that and might destroy you. It can be kind of like that. So to go from Jess now to Jaxon, I can tell, I could empathise with you where you were coming from. Like, I don't think I can go back there, because to be honest, if something happened to me, not even that extreme, like transitioning, I would feel a bit like, oh no, the inmates are going to pick up on maybe a perceived weakness, and therefore, my relationship with everybody is not going to be the same. So how were they dealing with you, treating you before as Jess as a female, and how do they treat you as Jaxon as a man now?
So I was Jess for 4 years before I went off, and I love the job. You're everything to prisoners. You're the mum, you're the dad, you're the nurse, you're the fireman, you're the, everything. You're the ambulance when they overdose. Absolutely everything. And that's why I love it, because it is that challenge and it's that stimulation, and you are something different, and you have to have that ability to adapt to every different situation.
What type of prison was it, like, just before you carry on? Like Cat A?
So the prison I work in is a Cat C and young offenders male.
And what type of offences are they committing?
In the general population, generally stuff like robberies, assaults, a lot of drug crime, things like that. But they opened a pipe unit, which is what I work on in that establishment. So it stands for Psychologically Informed Planned Environment. So it's a small unit, only has 10 beds on it, but it houses prisoners from all over the country for any crime really, but a lot of them, they have to fit a certain criteria. So a lot of them have got different aspects of personality disorder. A lot of them are on sentences, life sentences, or sentences where they don't do it anymore, but say they got sentenced for 2 years. It's called an IPP sentence. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but years ago they used to give out an IPP sentence. So say if someone committed something and got sentenced 2 years, but they got an IPP sentence, which means you can only get out dependent on your behaviour and whatnot. So there's certain people, and certain lads on my wing now who got sentenced 15 years ago for 2 years and they're still in, because they've sort of gone off the rails, whether it was because of drugs or behaviour or just give up basically or whatever, and they've just had no chance of getting that. They've not been able to do the courses that they require of them and things like that. So they end up still in 15 years later and think, I need to sort my life out just to get out of prison here. So the wing I actually work on houses prisoners from every background, from drug crime to arson to murder to whatever. It just depends on that individual. So for the first couple of years I was on the main wings, and yeah, I've always had a good relationship with the prisoners. I've always sort of met them on a level. I think I'm that type of person where if you come at me and we'll have a laugh, then we'll have a laugh, and if you come at me for a fight, we'll have a fight. I was always like that as Jess. It was kind of.
You had any fights in there?
Not fights, restraints.
Okay, fair enough.
Coming from the military, it does give you a good background to go into that kind of job, because you have got that discipline and you have got that. You can sort of empathise with the prisoners when they struggle with different changes, because the military is very similar to the prison in that sense, because you become so institutionalized. And that's why when people leave the military and people come out of prison, it's a very, very similar thing, because you feel like you've lost your identity, you've lost that structure. You've come from a place where you get up at this time, this is what you were, this is when you eat, this is who you're around, this is how you talk to people, this is what you do. And you lose that whole world, so people don't know what to do with themselves. So going into that job, I could always have a conversation, because I've always seen people as people. They're just humans. Any one of us could end up in prison tomorrow. And I certainly have never judged anyone based on their offence. I know I wouldn't have even looked unless I had to on why they were in. And it's somewhere that you have to be every day. So my mindset was, I don't want to be miserable every day. I don't want to be arguing all day every day. I spend more time here than I do at home.
Yeah.
So it can be a place where you can have great banter and have a laugh and whatever else. But on the other hand, it can be the most volatile place in the world. And so you get a mixture. I got a lot of respect, but I got a lot of abuse as Jess. When you are a gay woman in a male establishment like that, and you are not afraid to say no, or have those little arguments, or tell someone that they're bang out of order or whatever, it obviously it gets people's back up. And so they do instantly in a prison environment. If you have a weakness, that is the go-to abuse. So if you're, a female prison officer, you're a slag. If for me it was, you dyke, you whatever else, they would pick something. There would always be something. In my case now, if I piss somebody off, then the go-to would probably be, you're tranny or whatever. That's what it is. The people go for the weak point, don't they? But not everybody. I can't put everyone in the same boat. But when I was Jess, in those situations, I did get a lot of abuse in that sense. But that it was not expected, but that was just the type of abuse that I got because of who I was, sort of thing. Like I said, if you're a female, you get another word. If you're this, you get another word. So it's kind of always been quite a balance with me. I've always got on with a lot of them. I've not got on with a lot of them.
Yeah.
But I would always be straight down the line. And the worst thing you can do in a prison is promise someone something and not do it for them.
Yeah. Right. So I want to ask questions as if I was my own, well, probably not as young as my son, but as the kid version of me, literally, because I've never spoken to anyone who's done this transition. Okay, so let's start with the name, right? Jaxon?
Yeah.
Why not Fred? Why not Chris? Why not Joe? Why Jaxon? Where's that name come from?
So it took me a long time to figure out a name.
And it's still the same surname, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It took me a long time to figure out a name, but I realised that it's actually quite funny because the name that I was quite fond of, and it's horrendous now, but I think about it, and I said to my mum, I think I'm going to call myself Rex. And my mum and dad went absolutely ballistic, like, that's a dog's name. You're not having that. He's not doing that. And I don't even know where I got it from at the time, but I was just sort of going around a million different names. And I mentioned this one name and they went absolutely ballistic. But in that moment, I realised how important it was for them. And I thought about it and I thought, they chose my name. They chose their child's name. And I wanted to, for that reason, I wanted to keep the J. And then my initials wouldn't change, and
Yeah, makes sense.
little things like mum's got this necklace of like with mine and my siblings' initials on and stuff like that. So I wanted to keep the J. And then, have you ever watched Sons of Anarchy?
No.
So the main character on that is called Jax, and I just watched that series and I loved the name. So I sort of just thought, well, I'll just start calling myself that, and my ex-partner at the time, I thought, just start calling me that, and she did, and I spoke to my mum about it, and I kind of involved them in the conversation, basically, and that's kind of how it came about. But I wanted something a little bit unique, so that's why I went with the X. Okay. But and then my middle name, I made my mum's maiden name.
Okay.
So I had both my mum and dad's name, and then the name that I'd chosen.
Okay. So I mean, it must be quite exciting and quite, like, I don't even know what the word is, but like you're redesigning yourself.
Yeah.
Because the bit of kind of jovial answer you gave me when I said about your age, 28, you went, no, I'm actually 1. Because you started again as Jaxon, and you have started almost like life again, but you've brought some experiences with you, I guess. So, like, the obvious ones then. Jess didn't have all these tattoos.
Yeah, she did.
She did have all these tattoos, yeah? Everything.
No.
Was that part of the plan as Jaxon, or was that just because you like tattoos as Jess as well as Jaxon?
Yeah, I've always loved tattoos. My first sleeve. So I had the sleeve as Jess. I didn't have this arm or my hand on my neck.
Okay.
So I kind of grew a bit more of a backbone as Jax and against my mum. But I had the sleeve, and it was all very, very like meaningful things. And I even had, so when I came out as gay when I was 20, I was sat around my dining room table crying, and my sister was squeezing my hand, and she took a picture of us holding hands, and I had it tattooed on me.
That's cool.
Because at the time that was a really significant time, for me in my life, and so everything on this sleeve has been sort of part of the journey, and I think a lot of that was because I was trying to get through something.
Yeah.
I was trying to motivate myself and get through a lot. So if I went through this whole sleeve, I'd probably end up in tears, because it was just different things that's ended up happening, or different words and things like that. So I've always loved tattoos. I always planned on getting tattoos, but I always felt very restricted as a female.
Okay.
Not that I believe you should be as a female, but personally, I felt like I couldn't really embrace how much I loved tattoos because I was a female, and there is that slight different element of it, and you have to think about your career and what you're going to do and everything else. So
it does seem like, well, especially where I'm from, which is London, you see a lot of fellas who do have a lot of tattoos, and it's kind of like, so what? Like,
yeah.
But if you saw a female, I do know a few females got a lot of tattoos, but it's very rare. Like, it's like, oh wow, she's right out there with her tattoos,
Yeah. So there is still that stigma of it, and I sort of I wanted more, but I was apprehensive as Jess, and then obviously when I came out, it was my chance to change my image and embrace who I was. And the first thing I did was get a tattoo on my neck.
Yeah.
And obviously, again, my mum and dad went absolutely ballistic. Yeah, it was 5 hours of hell, but worth it though. Like it's my most special, tattoo, because I think the butterfly for me represents a transition and represents what a butterfly has to go through to get to that point of being so beautiful. So but instantly it changed my image, and I feel like it made me Jax, if that makes sense. I got it as soon as I started testosterone, and I just felt like I was like, oh yeah.
So you made the decision a couple of years ago, and then I think on some of your YouTube videos I heard about you referenced a 12-month kind of transition. Now that's not all just psychological. That's the physical aspect of it. You just mentioned there about taking testosterone. So talk to me about the physical side. Like, is it injecting testosterone, taking tablets?
Yeah.
And then when does the surgery come into it?
So a lot of people, when they think about transition, they think people ask a question, and a lot of this is why I'm trying to put this information out there, because there's so much lack of understanding and lack of knowledge, and I didn't know half of it before I even started to transition. So no wonder nobody else, because if it doesn't affect your life directly, you've not got a clue, and you would just turn a blind eye to it. But so I take an injection of testosterone every week. So what they do is they measure your testosterone levels and then try and get them to a point where, say, a 27-year-old males would be, depending on how much your body produces and whatever else. So to begin a gender transition to go through the NHS, there's probably over a 3-year waiting list on the NHS just to see a psychologist, to be assessed, to get diagnosed with gender dysphoria before you can then even be referred to see somebody about taking hormones. So that in itself will make people kill themselves, because it's horrendous. People, for me looking at that, I was like, I can't wait that long. I've just come to the point where I'm ready to do this, and I'm going to sit here and wait another 3-4 years. So that is scary, that there isn't enough yet to get people moving quicker. So I was fortunate enough to save money and go private. So I went with a company called Gender Care, and it still took me about 10 months to get an appointment with a psychiatrist. And then what they do is, I had like about a 2-hour conversation with him about me, about my life, about what I understood about gender and transitioning and all those things. And they kind of then assess where you're at, if you really understand what you're saying, if you really understand how you feel and what you want, and to try and assess whether you need counselling or whether you're ready to do this or whatever else. Because like you said, some people could make their own decision, or they could have been influenced by someone else, or all sorts of things. So he was happy that I knew what I was talking about and what I wanted, and I understand what changes it would bring and whatever. So he then referred me to an endocrinologist who looks into your hormones and whatever else. So then you have a consultation with them, like months later. So then they talk to you about the similar things, if you understand what it's going to do to your body, and if you're sure, and how you wanted to take testosterone and things like that. So you can take it in a gel, in like a slow release injection, which is like every few months, and one that sort of gets into your system quicker. And you can take it, initially it was once a month. So that's what I took. And so now, because they've been measuring my levels at the moment, I take an injection every week. And it takes about, for the first 6 or 7 months, you don't really see much different. But once you do start taking them, the effects of testosterone are irreversible. So that's why it's probably more difficult physically for a male to transition to female, because once you've gone through that male puberty, you can't reverse the the voice drop or the square jaw or the facial hair or the bigger bone density and things like that testosterone brings. You can't reverse that. Whereas if I stopped taking testosterone now, my female hormones would take over, but I just wouldn't be able to change my voice back or stop growing, you know, hair in places that men do, or, you know, things like that. So they've just got to make sure you understand everything that's going to happen to your body. So about the 6 or 7 month mark, and you start sort of noticing little bits of different. So at that point, that is when my period stopped. So that's like obviously different for each person. And then your voice just starts to like, it's basically going through a male puberty. I'm basically in a moment now where I'm a teenage boy for a couple of years. So I'm about 18 months into it now. So, but yeah, it's different for everybody. Some people, you know, will wake up with a full beard and whatever else, but the effects of it is, like, I find it fascinating. You know, it's women, it redistributes the fat around your body and things that you wouldn't even realize happen. So females hold their fat on the hips and the thighs, and males predominantly hold it on the stomach. So over time, it redistributes all of that. So the shape of my whole body is completely different, you know, whether that's not having as much of a bum or having thinner legs, or, you know, I walk around now and say to my brother, like, I've got heavier legs than you now, you know, and but for me, I'm chuffed with that because it's something that, you know, my beard's still trying, but, you know, it's not there yet. But
is that the goal, to grow a beard?
Just a little bit of stubble, nothing major. But, you know, just it's tiny things like that obviously is a big deal for me, because it's something that I look at now and I think, oh, I've always wanted that. But
do you know, like, when, I don't know, like hair on the legs or more on the arms, or the voice drop, or when you do eventually have stuff coming through on your face, you know, the hair, when you've gone, you know, you said it was gradual, but there must have been a day where you're like, oh my God, this is I am transitioning massively here. You know, like what comes to mind, and this is the child in me again, you know, like Wolverine at the X-Men.
Yeah.
Like suddenly the spikes come out his hand and now he feels superhuman.
Yeah,
because
definitely.
That's who he truly is.
Yeah.
It's a bit like that. You feel like a bit
I think,
of a superhero version of yourself.
Yeah, I do now. I'm getting there now. So it probably took about 8 or 9 months before I started to really feel like something was changing. So for the last 6 months, I've felt brilliant, because I've started to look in the mirror or look at pictures and think, oh, I'm changing. The shape of my face has changed, or, you know, obviously there's like more hair on my face, or, you know, every time someone sees me who's not seen me for a while, they're like, bloody hell, your voice has changed, and things like that. So now over the last 6 months, I feel like I'm finally coming out of that stage where I was still looking like Jess, and I was still looking quite feminine and being misgendered and getting called a woman quite a lot. Whereas now, I very, very rarely, you know, get called or mistaken for being a female.
I know you put it on your socials about Miami.
Yeah.
You know, now rather than having breasts, you've got chest.
Yeah.
So I want to just talk about the obvious, that, and then also going from vagina to penis, like. That for me again is a conversation I felt I would probably never have with anybody.
I mean, I haven't had that done, but yeah.
Okay, so is that planned next?
I don't know. It's so,
because this is another thing that I'm fascinated with. Like, you mentioned you were gay as Jess.
Yeah.
So I assume you still like women.
Yeah.
You do, yeah. Because then I thought to myself, if you now like men, it's just like, how does that all work?
No,
you know?
I hope I don't like men, because if I come out gay again, my mum and dad's head is going to fall off.
It's just crazy. But then if you did have penis rather than the vagina, how does that all work? Because people do go through that transition where they fully transition to that side of stuff. Yeah. So how come you've not thought about?
So I've got a million different answers here to answer all those questions, because I don't want to miss telling you something.
Right, so start with the chest, because you've put that out there, yeah? So you taken off the breasts.
Yeah.
Got just I don't even know if I'm giving the right description, so forgive me if it's coming across a bit like naive. But you've gone from breast to chest, yeah? Why did you choose to do that then?
Yeah.
Because you said you haven't changed everything. So why did you choose to do that part?
So for me, the chest surgery was the most important thing. You know, it's something that was holding me back so much. Because it does make you so conscious of it, and it's a massive giveaway, and it can put you in dangerous situations, obviously, as well. Like, you know, if you're in a place where you don't want people to know straight away or whatever, you never know you're around. So, and I was taping them down a lot with, you know, like the strong like KT tape.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
So I was like
stuff.
taping them down, so it was obviously like stretching them a lot anyway. And I'd leave that on for about 4 or 5 days, and then I would be covered in like blisters and burns from taking it off and then putting it back on, and it was really and you could wear a binder, which is like a really, really tight sports bra to like flatten it, but obviously that's massively uncomfortable, and it restricts your breathing and your ribs and stuff like that. So the things you put yourself through just to feel, you know, gender euphoric is unreal. But so the chest thing was massive, because all I've ever wanted was to feel my t-shirt on my chest, or be able to take my top off in the sun, or, you know, if I was ever going to go on holiday, I didn't want to be walking around with a t-shirt on, and I would never take my shirt off with taped breasts. For me, I couldn't do that. You know, some trans men can do that. So it was just a life-changing and life-saving surgery for me, because it was something so important. And for me, if I had that done and nothing else, I would be so much happier than I was. That's what was important, and it could have cost me all the money in the world. I would have gone and done it. But obviously, initially, my mum and dad were quite worried that I'd chosen to go all the way to America to have it done, and didn't really understand at the beginning why I wanted to go to that certain surgeon. But I'd researched into it for about 18 months, and I really wanted to go to a surgeon who understood the importance of the aesthetics of your chest. And because, you know, a lot of surgeons will just cut you straight through the middle and leave you with no nipples, and not, you know, just take the breast out, and that it's simple, just take the breast out. Whereas for me, I've always been into my fitness, and I've always appreciated the aesthetics of it, you know, an athletic physique, and I wasn't going to go through all of this trauma to have a body I still didn't love.
Yeah.
And so when I spoke to her, she understood how important it was to put those incisions in, you know, underneath your pec muscles, so that they'd sit nicely. And as much as I build my chest muscle up now, they'll sit nicely under that, and they'll eventually, you won't even see them at all. So that was so important for me, because, you know, I would love to model or to go into different things and show a trans body as just human body, and, you know, and sort of do those things. So I didn't want to end up with something I really wasn't happy with. So it was just the most important thing for me to do, to come out and to have a chest that I was proud of and that I loved, and that I could look in the mirror and go, oh my God, yeah, thank God they're off me. Yeah. So that's why. So that was the most important thing.
You mentioned about the cost.
Yeah.
Obviously, it must have been a gradual thing, and you've gone private. So how much does it cost you so far?
So the private consultant appointments cost around £600-700 each for going on hormones and stuff, and getting diagnosed with gender dysphoria and whatnot. And then the surgery in Miami cost me 10 grand. Wow. And then obviously a few grand to go. And I took my sister as well, because I wanted someone there, and you know, she's been by my side through everything. And so I paid for her to come with me as well, because I was asking that of her. So probably in total, I'm probably up to about 15 grand.
Of course, not a cheap decision either.
No, but I'm alive, and that's,
yeah, listen,
that's what, you know.
The other saying is, you can't put a price on health.
Yeah, and that's what I always say to myself, and
Yeah.
my friends say to me when I'm like, I've never been as skint, like, yeah, but you're alive.
Yeah.
And you're happy.
Yeah. So I'm inquisitive here, and I feel a bit uncomfortable, because I feel like
it's okay, honestly.
I'm taking liberties.
No, it's okay.
I need to ask.
It's okay.
So why not the last part?
So when people think about transitioning, people think, and often people ask people, oh, have you fully transitioned? Are you fully transitioning? And really that doesn't really exist, and some people might get offended by that. Some trans people might get offended by that because some trans people choose to just transition and identify as a different gender but not change any of the body. Or some decide to just change the chest, or some decide to just change everything, or some decide to not take hormones or just take hormones. Or so a transition from one gender to another doesn't always mean completely transitioning everywhere, sort of thing, which I think is important to sort of tell people. But for me, it's something that I would like to do in the future, but it's not where it needs to be yet.
Okay.
I certainly don't. It involves, at the minute, for female to male surgery like that, it involves a massive skin graft, several surgeries, a hell of a lot of recovery, massive risk of losing all feeling completely, or it not working, and all of these things that, when I look at it, it's definitely not something I can afford now anyway, but it would put a hell of a lot on my life that isn't really worth it right now, if that makes sense.
Right.
So whether it's something I'll end up doing or not, I don't know, but I think that it would give me a lot of reassurance and fulfillment in myself if I were to have it done, but I would only ever have it done correctly, and if it was at the point where I thought, right, this is worth doing. Because it just holds so much risk, and obviously it holds putting your life on hold for a long time, and you have a skin graft all the way up your arm and have to retrain your hand to know how to move, and all this risk and being off work. And if I look at it now, it's just not worth the mental trauma of any of that. There's ways and means of living your life without that. So for right now, it's not something that I'm immediately thinking about.
Did you say you're single at the moment?
Yeah.
Right. So I'm married, right? And I've been with my missus for like 14 years, yeah? So I've never been on things like Tinder, never been with things like any of these things. So I don't even know how they work. But I would imagine if I'm filling out what the kind of person I'm trying to go after, right? Yeah. I
love this conversation.
Right.
It's brilliant.
So I'm going after a bird, tick, who's always been a bird, right? That's number one. And then two, I don't know, dark hair, blonde hair, I don't know, maybe, there's loads of things that I'm going to go for. And I would say that's most men that I know, most of my friends who are fellas, we probably would have like quite a similar profile who we would go after.
Yeah.
But like having someone to say, right, I want to go for someone who is a man, loads of tattoos, but also, no, I don't think they would put out something down that used to be a female, but has female parts still. Do you know what I mean? It's fucking complicated, Jackson.
I know.
This ain't a straightforward conversation.
No, it's not. And this is why I've always said to everyone, like, it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to ask me questions. As long as no one's ever malicious towards me, I will talk about anything, because, like I said to you before, if we don't have these conversations, how's anyone going to learn anything? So, obviously I get what you mean, because initially that's why I was absolutely terrified and thought no one's ever going to want to be with me again. I'm an alien.
It's like what I say about what we do here. Like, we're in the art market, but we're in a niche. You're in a niche. You are.
I'm going to start saying that. Yeah, I'm a niche.
Yeah.
Yes, it was a massive fear of mine, and what I've realised over the last, don't get me wrong, I'm still only at the beginning of this, and I still have massive insecurities when it comes to that, and massive worries, and I'm not the most confident in that aspect. But what I have realised over the last year with the people who I've been around, whether that's friends or people who have had like brief, relationships or encounters with or whatever, is that a lot of people who know me now have opened their mind.
Yeah.
Just through knowing somebody.
Yeah.
Because I think if you don't know anybody, so for example, if you lined up, 20 straight women and asked all of them would they be with a trans man, and it's nothing against them and they're not doing anything wrong, but the majority of them would say no, because they would think, like say, because I've not had bottom surgery, they'd think about it and go, well, I couldn't do that. But through people being in my life, friends and people I've dated, they've all said to me, I 100% would now, because I know you, and I know that it doesn't actually, it goes out the window. It's strange. Someone said to me who I dated a while ago, since going through all this, she was like, I've realised that it's not the biology that you're actually attracted to. It is the gender identity, because when you've got that connection with someone, or you have feelings for someone, or you have that sexual chemistry or whatever, it does go out the window. And it became more of a problem for me than them. I was like, well, especially before I'd had surgery, I was like, well, are you sure? Are you, really uncomfortable for me? Yeah. But for them, they were like, I don't care. I'm attracted to a man. You identify as a man, you look male, you present male, your body language is male, you act male, all of these things is male, and that's what I'm attracted to. I don't look at someone and go, oh yeah, he's got a penis, I'll go with him. And I think, obviously, some people, they just downright wouldn't be able to, but if you've got that connection with someone, or, my friends have said to me, 100%, just because, you're dead fit now. That's basically what they say, because it's just that either it's there or it's not. It's something. I wouldn't say it's the person, but it's the identity. So when people say to me, does it make me gay or straight if I fancy you? Well, it still makes you a straight woman, because are you attracted to men? Yes. Do you see me as a man? Yes. Do I present as male? Is that what you're attracted to? Yeah. So when you've got that, it goes out the window for people, and that has shocked me more than anybody else, because it's me then who ends up feeling really really uncomfortable, and them reassuring me.
Yeah, I totally hear that. I would imagine in the future, as time goes on, it's almost like you're gonna, I don't know, you find your own rhythm with it all. But like, do you know, like when females come over to you, is it almost like you have to tell them straight away? Because I don't know, like if I was in your position, I'd be like, me would be like, I've got to tell them straight away, just to kind of, if they're not interested, get it out the way straight away. Or do you like try and get to know them, form this bond, but then at the last minute you've got to kind of I mean, maybe I'm thinking about this the wrong way, but it's almost like do you have to like be transparent from the get-go, but then almost why should you, because you have transition. It's like it's a tough one.
It is, and it's and I get abuse about that quite a bit on social media and stuff. People comment and go, I hope you tell girls in clubs, I hope you do this, I hope you do that, and whatever else. But
because I can, just on that note, I can slightly see where they're coming from, because it's almost like, again, this is me being a bit naive, and now we've had this conversation, I totally like understand your position and the education behind it. I totally get it. But then people might deem it as being a bit unfair to like say, I am a male, which you are, but then the last part hasn't taken place, and it's like you get into a bedroom, you're like, oh, just by the way, what, like that? Do you know the complications?
100%, and I would never do that. I've never been obviously in that situation. The people who, I've only been in situations where I've like known people, or I've got to know people who already knew, but obviously I'm quite open about it anyway, so I wouldn't be shy about it. But in that sense, I believe that you should only ever have to disclose something like that if you are literally about to go home with somebody, or if you're about to be intimate. If you're just meeting somebody or having a chat, or you kiss someone in a club or whatever, I'm not going to go around and go, hi Jax, I'm Jax, I'm trans every time I meet someone. That's not what you should have to do. I don't think you should have to do that. But if you're about to be in someone's intimate space and be, intimate in general, then 100% I think you should be honest. Yeah. And I would always be, from my view, but yeah, it's hard, and it's one of them things that is difficult.
It's
but
very, very difficult. So one more sort of scenario I'm building, because like you mentioned, you was with someone, you made a decision to transition. So this is another complicated thing, because if my wife turned around to me today and said, "Right, Steve, I'm now gonna become a man," and the reverse of Michael Jackson, for example, I'm doing a completely 180. I'm going a completely different way. I'm not only going to be a man, but I'm going to turn into a black man, for example.
Yeah.
And if she honestly felt like that and had to do it, I'd be like, crack on, do that. But it would be very difficult from what I'm attracted to right now and having 2 kids with her to then, you're completely different. Completely different.
Very difficult.
The race, the gender.
Yeah.
I know the spirit inside is the same, but physically, and that's what the sexual chemistry is a lot of the time. It's the physical attraction, and then it's the spirit that you're attracted to, and that's them 2 components combined.
Yeah, together it's both.
That's how
it's
you bond that soulmate. But if she suddenly become an Asian male, a black male, or whatever, it'll be like, I don't know if that would be, I'd be compatible to that. And is that bad, me thinking of it, or am I just being real?
Yeah, no, you've got to be honest with yourself about everything, and it was difficult, So the partner I was with when I started to go through all of this, she had always identified as bisexual. So when we were sort of going through this and whatever, all credit to her in that aspect. She got me to the point of admitting it and embracing it and making me feel okay about it and all of that. And she thought that it was nothing, it was fine, just transition, we'll be fine, nothing will change, your soul's still the same, blah blah blah. But as it started to happen and become real, it took a massive toll on our relationship, and we massively underestimated how much you had to grieve a person, because she fell in love with Jess and, wanted to be with Jess, and Jess was the perfect woman for her, and she was attracted and loved Jess for all these reasons. And as much as she loved Jax as a person, he took Jess away. And it was really deep to kind of try and work out what all of that was, and I struggled obviously a lot with it, because I was so focused on trying to get through that, and then she was trying to figure out, actually this is having a massive effect on our life and our relationship, and actually the dynamics are really different, and so how do we act now, and does she need to be more feminine because I'm now masculine, and the whole dynamics of everything, does the bedroom dynamic have to change, and do I need to dress differently? Does she need to dress differently? And all of that combined was just a massive big confusion. And I think a very rare amount of people can get through that. But for us, she was not over Jess and could not get over Jess. And I was obviously the constant reminder of that. And in the end, that it kind of just it broke us. But it was, we massively underestimated that you do have to grieve that person. And I think she was grieving Jess for a lot longer, and I sort of had to move on with my life, and I had to embrace Jaxon, because she was so upset over Jess, it was making me think, oh well, do I need to be, I was kind of like dampening down what I needed to be to try and be more feminine, or to try and stay a bit like Jess. And eventually we both just realised, like, we're going in different directions here. I need to do this and you need to do that. So it did just sort of take its toll, but we tried. We tried with a hell of a lot, and there's different books and different people who've been through it and whatever else. But yeah, it's massive, because like you said, no matter how much you love your wife, if she suddenly changed and the image of her completely changed to like different gender identity, a different, it's gonna be hard, because that's not, although you fell in love with her soul, that's not who you initially had that attraction to, or who you pictured yourself being with, or the woman you saw on your wedding day, or the all these things that you would have to grieve. And a lot of people may be able to get through it, and that would, it depends on the person, doesn't it? And if you really are meant to be, then you will be, won't you? But in that situation, we wasn't.
Do you like reflect on that relationship and like kind of miss your ex-partner?
As a person, I suppose, yeah. But I look back on my past relationships now, and as much as I loved them all as people, I look now and I realise that I was just craving companionship. I just was terrified of being on my own, and I just wanted that reassurance that I'm okay, or that I just didn't want to be on my own. I just hated being on my own because I was afraid of my own thoughts. And so I think more than anything now, my past relationships have been a crave for just having someone there and loving them as a person, but them never really being quite right, because I was never in it for the right reasons, or having that real connection, because I wasn't authentic to myself.
Yeah, understood. I do want to ask you something where it's come up in the news quite frequently. It's about an athlete. You might know who I'm talking about. Leah Thomas, who used to formerly be known as Will.
What does she do?
Well, she is a swimmer in America.
Yeah.
I think she's number one now. But I think as a man, previously she was like 100 and something, right down the chain, and now she's converted over. And the only reason why I've mentioned it is because, again, when I'm doing my research, she comes up all the time.
Yeah.
And it's a big debate.
Yeah.
Like even on Wikipedia,
Massive.
It says on there, it's been a big debate for some time. Because I understand she's transitioned to a female. She was once a male. But the biological makeup, would you argue, still a man? Yeah.
So obviously, like when I've like spoke to the prisoners and tried to like educate them or whatever, and obviously there's a massive difference between sex and gender. So your biological sex that you're born, you can never ever change that. That's your biological sex. I was assigned female at birth. That doesn't mean it's who I am. It means that's what I was assigned at birth. That's my biology. And you can never change that. Whereas obviously your gender identity is who you are and what you want to be and whatever. And the whole sport thing, I've never really let myself delve into, because I'm torn. Even as a trans person, it's a difficult question, because when you do think about it, the biology of her, she was assigned male at birth, and she's gone through a male puberty, and she's developed that. I don't know the right words, but
like the bone density, as you mentioned earlier, and stuff like that.
the things that you can't reverse, And although her hormones will be on a female level now, and she won't have the levels of testosterone a man would have, you can't change the fact that she may have that whole different aspect of her biology. So that is a difficult question, because then you think, I don't know. But then certain women can be built like, biologically born women can be built like that. So it's I can't really answer that question, because I'm on the fence myself. I don't.
And I know it's a bit it's almost a little bit unfair me asking that question to you, because you've gone through your own.
I feel
transition.
like a bad trans person being on the fence. Do you know what I mean? But I have to be honest, and it's
because like it's almost like I'm giving you all the responsibility for all the trans people out there in the world to say, right, these people should be allowed to compete or not. But I just thought this is a perfect time to talk about it, because it's so hot in the media. And obviously we're having this conversation. I mean, look, I understand she's now a female, but there was a, as a man, she wasn't winning. He wasn't at the time. She wasn't at the time winning all the races. But now she is, and you can't ignore the fact that probably a big part of that was because she used to be a man, and she's got all the power still as a man. And the only way I can, the only small little kind of insight to that world, not completely, but I used to do Thai boxing. So I'd done boxing, Thai boxing, went back to boxing, competed. I got 16 fights, and I've done a lot of sparring. And there was a few females down my old gym who were world champion females. They were female at birth and still females now. Fucking mustard, like very good, tough women. But when I sparred them, they're technically better than me, and they're kind of the same height. But I felt like the power was different.
Yeah.
You know, my power on their power.
Yeah.
And I felt like, you know, if I had a fight with them, I wouldn't want to have a fight with them because they're fucking really, really good. But I feel like my power as a man will probably edge over it. Now, if they suddenly transitioned to a man and they wanted to have a real fight with myself, I was still in the back of my mind think, well, the makeup is still the female, you know, and I'm going to probably have the upper hand now. And I've been looking at all the comments from the females who were competing in the same race, and they were even doing their own podium to say that we're not going to share the same podium with Leah now because really she was once a man. And it creates this massive debate.
It's hard.
And it's like, should there be their own independent races? Because like the thing is, no disrespect, if you went into a boxing match now, if someone would say, give me your gut feeling, Steve, you know, if Jaxon was going to fight someone the same capability but another man, I would be like, I feel like the man at birth would have the upper hand, not because of their ability, because of their
build.
They're building their strength.
Yeah.
That's just me being honest.
Yeah.
That's not me being prejudiced or anything like that. I'm just being completely real, and I wouldn't want someone to say, no, I'm gonna pump Jaxon up, go in there, knowing that you're probably gonna get hurt. And that's what it will come down to. People will get seriously hurt because of the inclusion side of things. Does that make sense?
It's so hard because you know, people shouldn't be banned from competing because because they need to transition or whatever, but I 100% like get what you're saying. You know, there was the MMA fight as well, weren't there? And people were getting really, really hurt. But then could a biologically born female do the same? I just don't know. But I agree with you though. The build, you know, you can't fake or change a biological sex, and I'll probably get a world of abuse off trans people for saying these things. Yeah, but you know, there is a difference between your sex and your gender, and the biological sex that you was assigned at birth. That will always be that. I will always be someone who was assigned female at birth, regardless of anything else. That doesn't mean it's who I am. It doesn't mean I am a female. It doesn't mean I identify as female or anything else. But when it comes to physicality and fighting or competing in sport and stuff, it's a horrendous question, and I don't know. I think it's awful, but I don't know.
Because it's almost like it's like where do you draw the line with it?
I know.
You know, like imagine science in the future, and I'm being a bit crazy and childlike here, but I know. You went to an ape, right? And the ape wanted to become I'm going, this is a crazy scenario, right? But fuck it, we're on this podcast and we're going to say what we want to say. So an ape wanted to become a human, right?
Yeah.
And an ape is known to be 4 to 5 times the strength of a human, yeah? But no, it knew it wanted to become a human. I love where this conversation is going. The scientists, or not scientists, but like the doctors knew how to turn that ape into a real life human. So could talk, could conversate, could think like a human. Said, right, I want to now compete and I want to do boxing or MMA. And suddenly started battering everybody. It's not, you could turn around and say, oh yeah, that human's just lucky. Well, no, because at fucking birth, it was an ape that had 4 or 5 times.
What do you talk about? It's state apes. Apes and humans and boxing.
Do you know what I mean? And it's almost like, it's like going from the inclusion to the logical side of life, and it's a hard balance. But again, ultimately, I don't think you can get away from who that person was originally from a you know, a makeup point of view. When it comes to sport and putting people in potential danger and things like that, I think it needs to be massively, you know, magnified in the way they measure it and the way they look at you know, maybe matching components or hormone levels and build and and weight maybe, and all these things, you know, whether it would come down to something where you could make it
I think it's important to make it equal in all aspects.
Yeah.
You know, everyone deserves to be in an equal position, regardless of whether you've been through a transition or you've not.
Yeah.
You know, everyone is there, and everyone should be on an equal footing. So, how you can try and do that, you know, I don't know. I'm not a scientist, but there must be a way of making that 100% fair in some way.
Yeah.
You know, by looking at every aspect of a person's build, weight, ability, you know, strength, whatever. There must be something that you can adjust and go, right, if we do this, then that's fair.
Yeah.
And I know it sounds daft, but, you know, you get a 3-second head start because, you know, it's something as simple as something. There must be something where you can go, right, we can make this equal where everyone can compete, but everything has to be measured because it's going to have to do something because there's only going to be more people. There's only going to be more people transitioning, more people having the courage to come out and live the truth, which they should, and they should be able to compete. And it, like you said, it shouldn't really be where you have to be in a separate category. Will it come to that? I don't know, but I think there could be a way of making it equal. I just think it needs to be really fine-tuned and really measured and you know, stop talking about it, but just make it equal. Do something and make it equal, and then no one can moan then, can they?
Yeah. So look, I want to round off the conversation just talking about like what the next chapter holds for yourself, Jaxon, and anyone that is listening to this podcast who's going through, you know, these similar sort of thoughts, feelings, decisions that you went through or going through even still now. Like, you know, what is the advice? Like, what do they do? Who do they talk to? They're not obviously alone, but they might feel alone. You know, they might feel they want to move to another country, different part of the country or different part of the world because they feel like they're not included over here. So, yeah, like in your own words, like how can they help themselves by starting to discover like there is a new possibility for them?
I think more the best advice that I can give anybody is, and I say it to everyone, is you have to live your truth. You can't get away from that, and you have to be willing to have the courage to be vulnerable in a sense of, I have to risk this being really bad because if I don't, then I can't risk it being really good either. I have to put myself out there, and I have to be brave with my life and fight for my own happiness, because it's way too short to just live an average life. And as scary as it is, we have to do what frightens us, because I believe that true happiness is on the other side of fear and doing the things that you really, really don't want to do. Because anyone who is, you know, successful or extremely happy or, you know, whatever, they've been through a hell of a lot of shit before that to get to that point. And I think people tend not to look at that. They look at successful people and they'll look at people who have achieved all these things, or, you know, people might even look at me now and the people who are around me and think, oh, he's doing great, he's happy, he's this, he's that, you know, like the butterfly. But you fail to see the hell that came to go through that transition and achieve something so great. So you have to be willing to put yourself out there and be brave with your life, in my opinion. And, you know, look on the internet, look on YouTube, look on TikTok and in the media, and the trans stuff is definitely coming up. It's definitely not there yet. It's kind of like where gay was 30 years ago. You know, it's building. But yeah, just look and watch and educate yourself, and definitely don't rush into anything, but use the support system around you and try and educate yourself and those around you, because that is what it is. That's the biggest problem in life at the minute, the lack of education and the fear of people of making mistakes. And but for me, I don't know. I want to continue to get my face out there and be visible, and like I said, you know, I recently was in a film, like I did a little bit of a mental health film, so I'd like to carry on and do a bit more acting or some modelling, or I'd love to write a book somehow to sort of give give people a survival guide, or give people hope, or give people something to say your life's worth living. You know, you can still have a life and a career and a relationship and a family and all these things. You don't have to give up.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
So 5-10 years from now, Jaxon doing modelling, maybe your own podcast.
Maybe. I love having these conversations. So maybe. Hopefully we can have another conversation at that point.
Yeah, for sure. I'll definitely be interested over the next 5 or 10 years. Yeah.
Definitely.
You kind of answered what I always ask the guests at the end, which is my quote, my mantra is be happy, never content.
Yeah.
So Jaxon, what does be happy, never content mean to you?
Yeah. Don't settle. Never settle. Do what scares you, and find what you really want in life and live your truth.
Good stuff. Where can people find you?
Instagram, Jax Rider Feeling, TikTok, Feely Jaxon, and the documentary on YouTube, that's under Jax Rider.
All right.
Yeah.
Top stuff.
Cheers.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for being an open book, and thank you for reaching out. And if you enjoyed this episode, please go and follow Jaxon. Yeah. Please subscribe to my own YouTube, my podcast, everything else, and share it with your friends and family. And always remember to be happy, never content. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cheers.